What happens in the woods stays in the woods. If you are up for this kind of creepy horror, then you have come to the right place. Hi folks, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we have listed some of the most terrifying tales of outdoorsy horror, from psychopath killers and sadistic teenagers to teleporting zombies and evil-worshipping cults. We have them all. Bear traps, crucifix torture poles, barbed wire chains, meat hooks, gutted corpses, and human scarecrows. All the storylines come with the must-have tropes of hiking gone wrong horror movies. Sometimes friends lead the main characters into a shady cabin in the woods, and sometimes bloodthirsty monsters are lurking in the trees. Either way, these movies will have you vowing never to go camping again. But if you still want a taste of horror in the wilderness, these movies are just right for you. So let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Yellow Brick Road, 2010. To start off our list, we have rural Gothic gem Yellow Brick Road, a psychologically haunting film that will most likely leave you disturbed. When you walk down this road, you give up everything. That's the tagline that sums up Yellow Brick Road, and it is also a premonition about the fate of the expeditioners in the movie. In 1940, the entire population of the New Hampshire town named Friar walks up a mountain and disappears in the wilderness. 300 bloody and frozen corpses were discovered, but 272 still remained missing. The trail was sealed off as classified, and the town was eventually repopulated in the decades that followed. 70 years later, a film crew arrives in Friar to investigate the trail and discover what lies at the end of it. With the help of townsperson Jill, Teddy and his crew embark along the trail but are shocked by some eerie happenings, such as Daryl murders his sister Erin over a silly fight, and jarring music starts playing out of the wilderness. Daryl is restrained, and the crew decides to return, but on their way, they witness the corpse of Erin propped up like a scarecrow. When Daryl flees with the only car, the crew realizes they are still heading north along the trail and are nowhere close to the town. While Teddy leaves to investigate the truth behind the sinister happenings, the crew members kill each other, including Teddy's wife Melissa. Moreover, one crew member jumps off a cliff, and another chooses to record his own death on camera. Meanwhile, Teddy reaches the end of the trail and discovers the town theater there, where spirits of all the dead townspeople check in one by one. The film ends with Teddy seeing his wife on the screen against a hellish backdrop and screaming out loud. Theories about the movie suggest that the hike along the Yellow Brick Road was a supernatural phenomenon where each person's fate depended on their personality and intentions. Wolf Creek, 2005. This blood-splattering horror movie centers around three backpackers exploring the Australian outback and introduces us to one of the scariest horror movie villains to date, Mick Taylor. Wolf Creek is said to be based on true events, particularly inspired by the murders by serial killer Ivan Milat in the 1990s and Bradley Murdoch in 2001. Wolf Creek 2005 received mixed reviews. It was loved for its low-budget horror aesthetics and criticized for being relentlessly gory. Liz, Christy, and Ben's car breaks down at Wolf Creek National Park when an apparent helpful stranger, Mick Taylor, takes them to a shed on the pretext of fixing their car and drugs them in an abandoned mining shaft. Mick sexually assaults Christy and ties up Liz, but the two manage to flee temporarily. But looking for a car to escape in, they sneak back into Mick's garages and discover some horrifying details. Mick has been abducting and murdering other travelers along the Wolf Creek Highway and keeping their cars and possessions locked up in his shed. As Liz takes off in a car, Mick stabs her from the back seat and wounds her spinal cord, paralyzing her. Meanwhile, Christy reaches the highway and seeks help from another traveler who is shot dead by Mick with a long-range gun. Mick shoots Christy dead and takes the corpses back to the shed. Meanwhile, Ben wakes up crucified in the mining shaft and escapes into the outback where he is saved by a Swedish couple. Title cards in the final scenes reveal that Ben was the only surviving witness to Mick Taylor's gruesome crimes, which really slowed the investigation. Ben remained in custody for 4 months and was finally cleared of suspicion when the police failed to track down Christy and Liz's remains without any hard evidence. The movie ends on a spine-chilling note of Mick Taylor roaming the Wolf Creek highways with his gun. Wrong Turn, 2021. 2021's Wrong Turn is a reboot of the OG Wrong Turn movie from 2003, which started this slasher film franchise. It is the 7th installment in the series and a co-production between the US, Germany, and Canada. Just like its predecessor, Wrong Turn 2021 is also set in West Virginia. A group of friends, Jennifer, Darius, Adam, Milla, Gary, and Louise, go hiking in the Appalachian Trails, but they steer off track and discover a sign that commemorates the formation of a settlement called Foundation in 1859. And sinister happenings start taking place soon after. A tree log rolls down and crushes Gary. Milla goes missing, their cell phones are stolen, and Adam falls through a trap. Soon enough, they encounter murderous natives who dress strangely and wear masks, and see them carrying Adam hanging between logs. When they kill one of the natives, Jen, Adam, Darius, and Louise are captured by the rogues of the Foundation settlement. They're produced before a court deep into the forest inside a primitive settlement. The leader, Venable, beats Adam to a literal pulp with a log as punishment for killing a native, and he also blinds Lewis with a hot poker. To save themselves, Jen offers to become Venable's wife, and Darius becomes a social advisor in the Foundation. When Jen's dad comes looking for his daughter, he tracks the cult settlement, and with some help from a young cultist, Ruthie, the father-daughter duo manage to flee, killing several natives along the way. A few months into their normal lives, Jen encounters Venable while meeting her stepmother. Jen is now pregnant with Venable's child. On the pretext of returning to the Foundation with Venable, Jen crashes the RV and stabs Venable to death, thus eliminating any connection to the Foundation from her life. Wrong Turn may be a bit predictable, but the relentless, gory horror more than makes up for it. The Ritual, 2017. This film takes us to the Scandinavian wilderness and brings the viewers face to face with an ancient Nordic legendary evil, which unleashes your inner demons. This British supernatural horror is based on the 2011 novel The Ritual and tracks 4 friends, Phil, Hutch, Luke, and Dom's hiking trip into an old-growth forest in Sweden, which they embark on in honor of their dead friend Rob. When they take a shortcut through the forest, they see a hanging bloody elk and cryptic symbols carved all around. They take shelter in a deserted cabin, but the next morning Luke's chest starts mysteriously bleeding, and Phil starts randomly praying to a headless effigy. The next day, they find Hutch impaled with tree branches, and Phil gets dragged away by a monstrous creature. Trying to escape the woods, the remaining friends, Dom and Luke, chance upon a lit-up path and arrive at an occult settlement, where they are knocked out. The cult worships an ancient creature that haunts the trees, and Dom is chosen for sacrifice while Luke is chosen as a worshiper. During the sacrificial ritual, the creature appears in the form of his wife to Dom and pins him through a tree. The creature is revealed to be a Norse deity named Moder, which grants immortality to the worshippers and saves them from sickness. in exchange for constant sacrifices. Enraged at the cult, Luke burns down the cottage where Motor is worshipped, drawing its attention. The Motor cripples Luke with hallucinations of their dead friend Rob, but he refuses to worship the evil and flees after wounding the deity with the strike of an axe. Still under the evil's hallucinatory influence, Luke manages to crawl out of the forest, leaving the Motor growling angrily as it cannot escape the wilderness. Cub 2014. This Belgian horror camp movie, centered around an over-imaginative boy named Sam, is an underrated gem. 12-year-old Sam goes camping with his Cub Scouts, but is regularly bullied by others and the leader Peter. During one such bullying trek into the jungle, the party loses their way and are forced to set up a campfire in a creepy location for the night. To keep the kids occupied, camp leaders Peter and Chris narrate the story of a werewolf named Kai haunting these very forests. Soon after, Sam runs into a feral boy wearing a mask and believes him to be Kai, but when he shares what he saw, Sam is laughed at and bullied again. Later that night, Kai returns to rummage through the campsite and steal their belongings, following which Sam takes a can of food and infiltrates Kai's lair. The two sort of become frenemies, because later when Peter's dog bites Sam, Kai growls in the dark and kills it for Sam. It is soon revealed that Kai is the son of a murderous poacher who has set up traps all around the forest and is thrilled that the humans are his new prey. As more and more campers die gruesome deaths in the traps, the poacher goes on a killing spree of his own and drives his truck through the camp tents, crushing the Cub Scouts. Back at his bunker, Sam and Kai are thrown into a well, and after a scuffle, the masked wolf boy emerges as the winner. He chases the last surviving member of the camp, Jasmine, who pulls out his mask and sees it's actually Sam and not Kai. This 12-year-old has a traumatic and violent past and has now become the new wolf boy. Sam stabs Jasmine to death and departs with his new mentor, the psychopath poacher. The Blair Witch Project, 1999. This eerie movie with supernatural horror comes with a linear storyline, but what gives the movie a sense of doom and horror is the found footage method. Three filmmaker students, Heather, Josh, and Mike, go hunting the Blair Witch, an urban myth, but get hunted in the process. The movie unfolds through footage procured from the cameras of the three friends who ventured into the wilderness of Burkittsville in Maryland to make a documentary about the mythical Blair Witch. Hearsay connects the Blair Witch to a hermit named Rustin Parr, who is rumored to have sacrificed 7 kids in a sinister manner. He killed the kids in pairs while one of them stood in a corner of his basement. Heather, Josh, and Mike learn about another myth that tells the story of a child who went missing for a few days in the forest and, upon return, mentioned a woman whose feet never touched the ground. The students' deaths are never really shown in the movie, but the impossibility of their survival is made amply clear. After setting up their tent in the forest, Josh is the first one to go missing, following which Heather and Mike hear his agonized screams. Heather and Mike follow Josh's voice to Rustin Parr's abandoned cottage in the woods, filled with demonic signs and bloody handprints of kids. The concluding footage shows Heather's camera is knocked down as she is attacked while Mike creepily stands in a corner facing the wall. No wonder moviegoers were pretty freaked out when the Blair Witch Project was promoted as a real story. Eden Lake, 2008. This British horror thriller starring Michael Fassbender begins on a romantic note and ends as your worst nightmare. The film addresses the social degradation of Britain around the 2007-2010 era and its effects on the youth, who are the brutal, sadistic villains of this movie. Steve and Jenny arrive at a remote English lakeside location for a peaceful holiday, but are interrupted by a bunch of rowdy teens, led by the deranged leader Brett. The couple find their food supplies infested with insects and suspect Brett and his gang are behind it. They arrive at a local shack and try to describe the miscreants, only to be dismissed by the server. Meanwhile, Brett has stolen the couple's Jeep and driven off with their belongings. When they confront Brett's gang in the dark of the night, Brett's Rottweiler is stabbed in the ruckus and Brett takes Steve hostage. This hostage situation results in one of the goriest scenes in the movie, as Steve is tied up with a barbed wire and a chain around his neck, while others stab him one by one as another teen, named Paige, films the torture. Jenny is unable to save Steve and attempts to run away but is captured by Brett and tied to a pile of wood along with Steve's corpse. When Jenny manages to escape, Brett sets his failed accomplice Adam on fire, and when Jenny crushes Paige with her racing Jeep, Brett is further infuriated and kills another gang member in frustration. Jenny drives all the way to town and crashes her car into a backyard party and collapses, but she wakes up and realizes it's Brett's house. As the townspeople brutally attack Jenny, Brett quickly deletes the torture videos recorded on Paige's phone. Jenny is never confirmed dead in the movie, leaving her fate open-ended. The Canyon, 2009. As the name suggests, this edge-of-your-seat thriller unfurls around the Grand Canyon and explores the horrors of the wilderness, forcing the protagonist to resort to extreme survival strategies. Honeymoon couple Lori and Nick go hiking in the wide expanse of the Grand Canyon, but are persuaded by their guide to explore a rock with petroglyphs, which is a half-day's journey away. They steer away from the herd, and the guide dies from rattlesnake bites, leaving Lori and Nick clueless about directions. The couple intends to turn back, but when they reach the petroglyphs, they realize they were going the wrong way all this while. They climb up the rock to get reception on Lori's phone, but before she could say her location, the call disconnects. Meanwhile, Nick slips and the couple topple over the rock with Nick's leg getting trapped in the base rock. When an infection starts, Lori is forced to cut off Nick's leg and seal the wound with a heated knife. The smell of blood attracts wolves, and Lori fights them off initially, but they keep following when Lori attempts to carry Nick on a makeshift stretcher. Weakened, without food and rest, Lori gives up and decides to mercy kill Nick by suffocating him, to spare him the torture of being eaten alive by wolves. Just as she kills Nick, a rescue helicopter arrives and Lori goes into shock about what she's just done to Nick. The canyon has some really disturbing scenes, such as the leg amputation and the euthanizing of Nick. This movie is definitely not for the faint-hearted. Killing Ground, 2016. This Australian movie turned Ian and Sam's New Year's Eve getaway into a sheer nightmare, all because they make a bunch of silly decisions. Killing Ground is a realistic thriller and is as intense as it is disturbing. When Ian and Sam go camping to a remote beach, they are guided by a stranger named Scotty. To their surprise, Ian and Sam discover an abandoned camp and a dehydrated toddler, and the movie moves to flashback. Days earlier, Robert and Margaret arrived at the beach for a quiet getaway with their teenage daughter Emily and toddler son Ollie. Scotty and his murderous partner in crime, Chuck, show up, kidnap Robert, and rape Margaret and Emily before killing them all by binding and gagging them. But somehow, Ollie wanders off. Back to the present, when Ian and Sam discover Ollie at the beachside camp, Scotty and Chuck arrive and separate the couple on the pretext of finding Ollie's parents. Chuck attacks Ian in the forest while Scotty tries to assault Sam but gets his wrist slashed, and Chuck mistakenly shoots him. Chuck then drags Sam to the killing ground, where Ollie's parents are lying dead, and waits for Ian to come save her. Ian returns with cops, but they are shot dead by Chuck, who forces the couple to drive him to safety. Sam crashes the car and later wakes up in a hospital with Ian, but Ollie is with neither of them. The final shot shows Ollie being guarded by Scotty's pet dog, Banjo. A Lonely Place to Die, 2011. This British action thriller takes viewers to the most treacherous mountains of the Scottish Highlands. It tracks the story of a group of mountaineers, Alison, Ed, Rob, Jenny, and Alex, who suddenly discover a kidnapped young girl named Anna locked up by mysterious captors inside a sealed underground bunker high up in the mountains. They decide to help her get to safety, but that actually turns out to be a death wish for the mountaineering crew. In order to reach the nearest town, they rappel down a tricky cliff, but someone cuts Rob's rope from the top and he falls to his death, injuring Allison with fallen debris. Seeing the mountaineering crew down below with Anna, the kidnappers steal guns from poachers and target the crew. With nowhere to hide in the open, arid terrain of the Highlands, both Jenny and Alex are gunned down, leaving Anna, Allison, and Ed to fend for themselves. Meanwhile, Anna almost gets washed away with the river rapids, but Allison manages to keep her alive. They arrive at a nearby town, and the rest of the movie plays out against the backdrop of the Gaelic Beltane Fire Festival, with Allison eventually killing one of the captors by pushing him into the fire. The other kidnapper dies a satisfying death when he's buried alive by Serbian war criminal Rakovic, who is Anna's father. In a lonely place to die, the setting shifts from the wilderness to the urban, but the first half of the movie is scarily nail-biting, with all action sequences taking place simultaneously with the heart-stopping trekking and climbing scenes. Devil's Pass, 2013. This found footage film takes place in a snowy setting of the northern Ural Mountains and references the Dyatlov Pass incident, in which 9 experienced Soviet hikers mysteriously went missing in 1959. Years later, 5 American college students, Holly, Jensen, JP, Andy, and Denise, set out to investigate the disappearances and never return. The film is shown through their recorded footage, which is never released to the public, but hackers drop it online. During their investigation, the students learn of a mysterious machine in the mountains and that there were 11 dead bodies, not 9. And there was something unusually wrong with the additional 2 corpses. As the students begin their hike towards the fateful site, they spot strange footprints on the snow and hear creepy howls, which take them to a weather tower where they discover a human tongue. When they reach Dyatlov Pass, an explosion sets off an avalanche that kills Denise, and the rescue team that arrives turns out to be Russian soldiers who kill Andy. To escape the soldiers, Holly, Jensen, and JP enter a secret bunker and discover a tunnel system inside, which is haunted by a mysterious creature. They come across teleportation equipment, piled up corpses, a soldier without a tongue, and documents related to the bizarre Philadelphia experiment, in which the U.S. Navy allegedly tried to make a warship disappear. The trio are attacked by mutant soldiers who can teleport. JP is killed while Holly and Jensen are forced to enter a wormhole, which takes them to a bunker entrance in the year 1959. As Russian soldiers strip and hang them on meat hooks, Holly and Jensen's bodies begin to mutate and revive. Preservation, 2014. The horror is insinuated through pure paranoia in this hiking movie, as 3 travelers become the prey of maniacal hunters in a forest preserve. In an attempt to revive her marriage, Whit travels to an adventure preserve in a forest with her husband Mike and his brother Sean, who suffers from PTSD. They discover that the game preserve is closed, but Mike insists they go off the hiking trail and pursue their holiday, only to discover that their belongings are missing the next day, and that each of them are marked with black X's on their foreheads. In sync with the tagline of the movie, man is the only animal that kills for fun. Whit, Mike, and Sean are tormented by a trio of masked hunters. As the psycho teens begin their hunting, the film comes with the usual but impressively executed tropes of jump scares, a dead pet dog, and some crazy survival moves, such as Whit stitching up her scalp with ignition wire and dental floss. With Mike and Sean gone, Whit is forced to transform into a ruthless killer in order to save herself from getting hunted by the masked teenagers. She stabs them with broken bottles and thrashes their brains out with a lug wrench, but not before getting cut up and wounded in the deadly hunting game. What makes this movie all the more scary is that there are no explanations about why these psychos are on a killing spree, making the horror seem so unpredictably real. Wolf Creek 2, 2013. Xenophobic serial killer Mick Taylor is back in this grisly Wolf Creek sequel, and the Australian outback is still his favorite hunting ground. The film begins with a reminder of who Mick really is. When he gets a speeding ticket, he shoots one officer and sets the other one ablaze. Mick then infiltrates a German couple's campsite nearby and pretends to be a helpful stranger, but soon enough, he chops up the guy and holds the woman Katerina hostage. Katerina manages to escape and gets a lift from an English tourist, Paul, who is driving along the highway, but Mick shoots at them, killing Katerina. He chases Paul in a truck, sending his car rolling down the hillside, and then sends the truck crashing towards the car. Paul somehow survives and seeks shelter with an elderly couple, who, too, get shot down by Mick. Paul is brought back to Mick's torture chamber, where Mick intends to quiz Paul on Australian culture and cut one finger off for one wrong answer. Paul intentionally gives incorrect replies so that Mick unties his hands. He clubs Mick and flees through the tunnels, where he sees an extremely fragile woman amidst a sea of corpses, who he later accidentally kills. Anyhow, Mick tracks down Paul and beats him unconscious, but somehow lets him go alive. Paul is later discovered in a town with a note that says, "Loser," suggesting his hide-and-seek was a fun deathmatch for Mick, who proclaims himself as the winner. Despite sharing his side of the story, Paul is held as a suspect for all the Wolf Creek murders. He eventually loses his mind and gets deported. This film, too, ends with Mick Taylor walking into the sunset with his gun, ready to make more kills.
Hey, big man. We can be cool, man. We can be friends.
Exists, 2014. This low-budget indie horror is helmed by Eduardo Sanchez, who co-directed the Blair Witch Project. Made in the found footage format, this creature feature starts on the usual note when the brothers Brian and Matt, along with Dora, Todd, and Elizabeth, drive to Uncle Bob's cabin in East Texas. On their way, they hit something and hear loud creature cries, but they ignore all that. The cabin turns out to be dilapidated, and they return to the car for their stay. They find bloodstains and tufts of hair on the damaged part of the car and realize that a Bigfoot creature is hunting them. They spend the following night in the cabin and record the Bigfoot running around the cottage, terrifying them and destroying their car. Brian and Matt add to the panic when they reveal that they stole the keys from Uncle Bob, and hence, nobody knows that they are here and no one will come looking for them. Matt bikes out into the forest to get cell phone reception, but just as he calls Uncle Bob, the Bigfoot attacks him. It returns to the cottage and kills Elizabeth, but when Todd fires the shotgun, the Bigfoot runs away. They hide in an abandoned RV, but when Todd sets off fireworks to alert Uncle Bob about their location, the Bigfoot kills him and subsequently, Matt, Dora, and even Uncle Bob, who managed to shoot it earlier. Brian wakes up near the corpse of a young Bigfoot and realizes that this is the creature they hit with the car, and now its grieving parent is seeking revenge. He points Uncle Bob's gun at the Bigfoot and begs for forgiveness. But just as he prepares to be killed by the Bigfoot, the creature disappears into the forest, leaving Brian the sole survivor of the forest massacre. High Lane, 2009. This French hiking movie begins on a super tense note, then keeps the story thrilling for a while, and then quickly turns into a blood-splattering slasher movie. A group of teenagers, Fred, Karine, Chloe, Guillaume, and Loic, arrive in Croatia for a thrilling hike up the Balkans and find that their chosen hike route is closed. Persuaded by Fred, they still decide to proceed, but what was supposed to be an adventurous hike soon turns out to be a dangerous trail. The rope bridge snaps after them, almost killing Corinne, and the hiking handles along the mountain are also missing. Leading the way, Fred climbs ahead but gets caught in a bear trap. The chain on its trap tightens and he gets dragged away by a mysterious serial killer. Meanwhile, Corinne manages to retrieve the others. Chloe falls through a pit, lands on the poacher's trap studded with spikes, and is severely injured, but is saved by Corinne in the dark of the night. As they rope themselves together, Corinne is shot through the chest and dragged away. Looking for their lost friends, Chloe, Guillaume, and Loic arrive at an abandoned cabin to find Fred lying naked and bloody on a table, who dies soon from shock and injuries. Loic, who is not very fond of Guillaume, pushes him into the basement where there are severed hanging human heads and a lot of hunting equipment. Just when Loic and Chloe realize that the serial killer is a deranged guy named Anton, he returns and locks up Chloe while Loic flees the scene. When Anton attacks Loic, Chloe has enough time to free up Guillaume, but Anton shoots him with a crossbow and Loic falls off a cliff, leaving Chloe to fend for herself. She injures Anton but fails to kill him, and then begins her descent on the nearest mountain cable. But Anton picks up the knife and cuts Chloe's cable line. The film ends with an eerie announcement that a boy named Anton got kidnapped at the age of 5, and he remains among the missing people who go hiking in the Balkans. Marvelous verdict. If you are looking for a hiking gone wrong meets monster menace and creepy killers, then these movies will keep you occupied. The freakiest thing about this outdoor horror genre is that some of these are said to be based on true events. If you have more suggestions about hiking horror movies, please let us know in the comments section below. We'll return with more such movie recommendations, but until then, you might want to cancel that cabin in the woods B&B booking. See you super soon. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe out there. Thanks, everyone.